Hey everyone and welcome back. So just wanted to do a very quick review of the new Ghostbusters Afterlife movie, which I was able to get out and actually watch in the theaters. And I know for a lot of us, we've been waiting for a Ghostbusters film for a long time, since we haven't had one since Ghostbusters 2. We have not had one since Ghostbusters 2. And Ghostbusters Afterlife is definitely sort of a continuation, a little bit more of the first film in some ways, because a lot of the story elements do fall in line with the events of the first film. So in this film, Egon's character has been killed off in the beginning of the film, and then his daughter, along with her two kids, inherit his old farm that he has sort of out in the middle of nowhere, and they're down on their luck, so they move in hoping that maybe he has a hidden fortune, but only find out he's desperately in debt, because Egon's daughter is very upset because they didn't really have much of a relationship. So she felt that he sort of abandoned him. He sort of went and lived on his own. And of course then you have the two kids, Trevor and Phoebe, who are trying to adjust to now a new home, with Phoebe being a lot more like Egon. She's got a little bit more of the sort of nerdy kid, kind of slightly awkward, but obviously a genius. But Egon's ghost is still sort of around in very subtle ways, kind of letting her sort of find different things that he has around this old farmhouse. But as the granddaughter discovers that there's definitely something more going on, that Egon was actually out there for a reason. Egon lived right in the area where Ivo Shandor sort of set up his little temple, which is obviously talked about in the first film. And the teacher at the new school, played by Paul Rudd, senses that there's something kind of special about Phoebe, the granddaughter, and sort of realizes that she's not just some dumb kid. They both sort of realize that there's something more kind of going on, because she finds an old trap in the house, an old ghost trap, and then they try and open it, and then they accidentally sort of release the ghost that is inside, which sort of snowballs a lot of events into motion. And then it sets up the fact that this could potentially bring back Gozer to come back and take over the world. This movie is very much about the kids. So the two kids, Trevor, Phoebe, and her friend Podcast, and then the mom and the Paul Rudd character are actually much more supporting characters in this. Kind of thought Paul Rudd would have had a slightly bigger role. It's not that he's not in it a lot, he is, but it's just his character is sort of very much more supporting. The film obviously is filled with a lot of cameos and sort of throwbacks to the first films. A lot of nice little touches. Obviously the music is there, so we get a lot of the themes that come back, and there is a lot of humor. Obviously, I mean, it is a funny movie. Now the film is a little slow for probably the first half, as it's sort of trying to set up everything. And the third act is really, I think, probably what a lot of us have been sort of waiting for the longest time. The third act is really where everything happens and everybody shows up. Spoiler, but not really. I mean, I'm sure we all know. But the film is definitely much more about the kids. This is definitely a film this is not Ghostbusters 3. This is Ghostbusters Afterlife, and I say that in the sense that, yes, it technically continues on story elements that relate back to the previous films, specifically the first film, but I would say it's almost a lot more like The Force Awakens, where, sort of the original characters are sort of very much just sort of small roles in this film. Now, I say it's like The Force Awakens, but on the plus side, unlike in my opinion, where that film went wrong, because it's not setting up a trilogy or anything where other stuff went massively wrong. This is very much self-contained. So the nice thing about it is that even though the third act is probably what a lot of us really wanted to see for the whole film, it was still really great to get that third act. And the thing is, the first two thirds are a lot of fun, and I think that's kind of the key with this film, is that it is a lot of fun. You just have to kind of go into it with expectations sort of in check, and some of it does sort of retread kind of old ground, little things that's wow, we've kind of already seen that, it's just being done a little differently. Now, is that a bad thing? Not really. I mean, again, I wasn't going into this expecting something to change my life or anything. And a few things where I kind of felt, even though it is, especially the third act, even though there's a lot going on, I kind of always felt like this was a much more of a small film, where the first two films especially had a little bit more of a kind of bigger feel to them. Some of the things that were going to happen would be massive and affect everything, where it's yeah, technically that is leading up to this in this film, but I think you don't really feel like the stakes are as high as they say they are. And I think a lot of that just has to do with the fact that, the first film especially used a lot of horror film elements to kind of build up a little bit of a tension and a build up, where this film, I don't think, has those elements. And some of the characters are a little, I kind of wish there was was a little bit more to them. Like Paul Rudd's character, again, I kind of wish there was a little bit more to him, because I think he, and especially Phoebe, the granddaughter, I think actually got along really well, because they were sort of like the two that were like really excited to kind of discover like all this stuff that is happening. I felt the mom was a little bit too cynical in some ways. Like, she kind of warms up later in the film, but I kind of felt like, you could have eased back on some of that just a little bit. I mean, there's a reason why she is, but still, at the same time, like, I could use a little bit less of that. There's a couple moments where I kind of felt like, I wanted like that nerd moment for myself, where like certain things are kind of introduced, where I was like, I kind of wish there was a little bit more of a moment there. One of them specifically where I kind of felt like they kind of dropped the ball a little bit was the first time the Ecto-1 actually appears with all the lights flashing and everything, which is a little bit later in the film, where it comes out of a garage and it sort of tears down the street, and it's just like, I really wanted the shot kind of almost like in the first film, where either the garage door opens, or at least you just see it in the garage, and then you see the lights kick on and everything. Is that just great moment where just everything kind of kicks in, and then it comes tearing out. Unfortunately, you don't have that moment. It's just, you just kind of cut and it's just on the street. And I was like, oh no. I was like, oh no, I wanted that little geek moment. And obviously, I mean, not to spoil anything, but I think everyone probably knows. I just won't say specifically what happens, but basically, it's nice to see a lot of the original characters again. Obviously, that's probably the big draw. And there was actually some very touching moments. I mean, I think they did a really great job as far as sort of honoring the memory of Harold Ramis, which I thought was handled actually pretty perfectly in the film. And even though there's kind of little thing at the very, very end that you can kind of read it both ways. They could technically set up another film if they ever do decide to make one, or it's just it can just show that it's just like, well, adventures can continue on, there's like life continues in the world, beyond the film. So nice thing is that it kind of works both ways. Like, you could technically do another film, but at the same time, if it just kind of ended here, like, that's okay too. You just kind of know the life kind of goes on beyond this. Is this a Ghostbusters film? I have been hoping we got. No, we probably missed that opportunity several years ago. And the closest thing we probably would have gotten would have been the Ghostbusters video game, which I do recommend if you ever want to play it. I think it's a lot of fun. If I had to rate it, I mean, to be generous, I would say it's probably about a 7 out of 10, because the thing is, there are a couple things where, some of the slower pacing and a couple elements where I'm like, yeah, it's okay. And again, I kind of wish there was a little bit more to the third act throughout the film. But the thing I really appreciate is the fact that it is just a fun film. And I think something, I kind of feel like it's been missing a lot in the last several years. Like, there's some of this, like, every film needs to have a message, or has to be like almost like overly serious and depressing or anything. It's just like, I just want to have fun sometimes. And that's what this film is. And sometimes you really just need that. And honestly, sometimes that's even all I ask for. So I just want to do sort of a semi-quick review of the new Ghostbusters Afterlife film. If you've seen it, definitely let me know your thoughts. And as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.